The 150 minutes of weekly exercise your doctor recommends might be keeping you alive, just not as alive as you could be. A large observational study has quietly upended the math on cardiovascular health, suggesting the real threshold for a substantial reduction in heart attack and stroke risk is in 150 minutes per week. It's 560 to 610. 3 to 4 times higher. Which raises an obvious question: what, exactly, has the public been told to optimize for? The 150-minute recommendation wasn't invented arbitrarily. It represents something specific, the minimum effective dose, the point above which measurable cardiovascular benefits first appear in population data. But minimum effective dose is not the same as optimal dose. A vitamin C tablet prevents scurvy. That doesn't mean you've covered everything your body needed. Guidelines that ask what's achievable, and guidelines that ask what's optimal, are answering different questions. The study followed tens of thousands of adults and mapped their physical activity against cardiovascular outcomes over time. What emerged was a classic dose-response curve: more activity, fewer events. The slope was steepest in the lower ranges, which is why 150 minutes shows any benefit at all. But the curve didn't flatten until around 600 minutes per week. That's not a rounding error at the margins. That's where the ceiling finally appears, and it's a long way up. Let's be concrete. 600 minutes per week is roughly 85 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity every single day. Or 90 minutes, 6 days a week, with Sundays theoretically off. For a person who commutes, works, parents, and occasionally sleeps, this is not a minor lifestyle tweak. It is the lifestyle, rearranged around movement instead of movement squeezed into the lifestyle. The math doesn't leave much room for negotiation. To be clear, moderate to vigorous doesn't mean elite athlete territory. A brisk walk qualifies. Cycling to work qualifies. A swim that makes you slightly breathless qualifies. The bar is effort, not suffering, your heart rate up, your breathing harder, sustained for meaningful stretches. What doesn't count, for the record, is standing up to get a snack and returning to the couch even if the snack was across the apartment. Your cardiovascular system responds to load. Arteries regularly exposed to elevated blood flow become more elastic over time. The heart muscle, trained to work harder, adapts: more efficient contractions, lower resting rate, better oxygen delivery. None of this happens at the margins. The body is deeply conservative about adaptation. It watches you exercise for a while first, decides you're serious, and only then commits to structural change. Think of your arterial system as plumbing installed in a building that almost never runs hot water. The pipes stay intact. They also calcify quietly, losing flexibility across years of low demand. Run the system regularly, meaningfully, and it responds by staying more supple than its age would predict. The infrastructure metaphor is almost embarrassingly direct. Pipes that handle pressure stay functional. Pipes that don't. The deeper problem this research surfaces is structural. Modern environments were not designed for 600 minutes of weekly exertion. They were designed for cars, chairs, elevators, and frictionless convenience. The 150-minute recommendation implicitly acknowledges this. It asks for what's achievable, not what's optimal. That's pragmatic public health. It's also a quiet admission that we've built a world that requires its occupants to supplement their own biology just to stay functional. This study is observational, it shows association, not causation, and the researchers are clear about that. Genetics, socioeconomics, and self-selection all complicate the picture. But the direction is consistent with decades of physiology. Your heart is a muscle. Muscles that are regularly, seriously challenged stay strong longer. The number that actually protects you isn't printed on any public health poster. It's roughly an hour a day, every day, of movement your heart has to actually work for, and it has been that number the entire time. Strip away the caveats and the finding is stark: the number everyone has been given, 150 minutes, was never the destination. It was the minimum, chosen not because science stopped there but because the recommendation system had to meet the world where it lives. The real ceiling doesn't appear until roughly 600 minutes a week, and the physiology behind that isn't controversial, it's just inconvenient. Muscles adapt to load. Arteries respond to demand. The body doesn't negotiate on your behalf, it waits to see if you're serious. The gap between what we've been told and what the data actually says isn't a mistake. It's a choice, one baked into every public health poster that has ever used the word minimum. What strikes us isn't that the number is high, it's that the number being high feels unreasonable to most people, and we think that feeling deserves more scrutiny than the study does. We built a world that engineered movement out of daily life and then set a floor for replacing it, and somehow that floor became the goal. We don't think that's a conspiracy. We think it's how systems quietly calcify. Each accommodation seems sensible in isolation, and then one day the accommodation is the norm and the norm is the ambition. Which leaves us with a question we genuinely can't answer: if the environment shapes what we consider achievable, and the environment was designed by and for people with different constraints, who, exactly, was the 150-minute recommendation always written for?